Well, I'm nearing completion of decking this Minimost XL. It's been a long process. I started last summer. I had to quit when the winter came because obviously I'm outside and this is my building tent. So the front of the deck has been completely done. Each individual strip has been epoxied on, and now I'm just working on finishing off the stern of the boat here. And I'll just give you a brief explanation of how I am putting these pieces together. So here's the section here I want to fill in. As you can see, it's a very long and narrow strip and it has quite a severe angle to it. So the first step I did was to take a regular piece of wood here, put it into position with the spacers, and then I drew a line from here to here, took it into my shop and cut it with my table saw. The next thing I did was I took this and then sanded it even with my table sander, and then it's simply a matter of placing it into position here and fitting it. And this is always a bit tricky because you have to play around with it, do a bit of fitting, and take it back, do some more sanding. And once I get things close, I make some X's on my painter's tape here, and this helps me line up my spacers. So I've got one there, here, here, and here. And what I want to make sure is that the spacing is even on both sides all the way up. Like that. I do the same thing on the other side. Here. Make sure everything is sanded smooth here, trim my piece, and then start to apply the spacers. Alright, I'm ready to start fastening this piece of mahogany to the deck, and the one on the other side here. The first thing I want to do is I want to wet out the surfaces before I put the thickened epoxy on. So what I'm going to do is just apply non-thickened epoxy to this and let it sink right into the pores of the wood. I'm using a slow hardener on the resin. This gives me more working time. So there's that one, and then I'm going to again just apply some non-thickened epoxy to the plywood surface here. That'll help with the bonding process. So I've coated the plywood underneath and the underside of the piece of wood I'm laminating on top with unthickened epoxy resin, and I'm just letting that soak into the pores of the wood. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that same epoxy and I'm going to thicken it up, and it's this thickened epoxy that I will use to bond everything together. I'm using 404 high density West System adhesive filler, and I'm going to mix it up to a peanut butter consistency. So that's about the consistency I'm after. Could be a little thicker. But that's what I want. Now, because I'm using or because I'm applying in such very limited spaces here, I'm simply going to back butter the piece of wood that I'm laminating here. There's not enough room to apply epoxy on the surface, so I'm going to take this now and get my spreaders here. These have different notch depths here. I'm going to use the very small one and start to apply my thickened epoxy on the back. And it does not take a lot. What I'm going to do now is make sure the edges are wiped clean here. I'm going to start to lay it into place here. I'm going to use these spacers to help align things up. And then once I've established that the spaces on either side of this are equal, I'm going to clamp it into place here. I'm not going to worry too much about that because I will sand that off later to even out the spacing so the spacing is equal on both sides of the board here. And I'm going to keep on with the other side, making sure that my gap is equal on both sides of the board, using these as spacers here, and then temporarily attach everything in place with these screws here. I can use little scraps of wood here to tighten things up, and then hold everything into place. Once the epoxy is set after 24 hours, I then remove these and carry on with the next one. There. So there's the process. Every strip of mahogany was fastened to the deck in this particular fashion. It may not be the best, it's not the worst, but what I was happy with is that it worked for me. I'll now let this epoxy set up for 24 hours, remove all of the temporary fastening, and repeat the process again.